Hi everyone, welcome to my kitchen. In today's recipe I'm going to show you how to make a delicious apple pie which is made from scratch. I'm going to show you how to make the pie crust. I'm going to be using a Nutralite classic spread to make the pie crust, which is going to be making it nice and flaky. You can make this special apple pie for Raksha Bandhan, which is coming up, or any other festival or a special occasion or a party at your home. So without wasting any time, let me just dive right in and show you how to make this dish. To start with, so I have a large mixing bowl here. I'm going to add in my sliced apples. I've peeled and sliced them, and it's important to ensure that you slice your apples fresh, right? So I'm just going to quickly add in my sliced apples, and I'm going to flavor the apples with a little bit of cinnamon. So first is the brown sugar that I'm going to add, and just a little bit more of the white sugar. I'm going to add in the cinnamon powder, some squeeze of lemon juice, and a pinch of salt, and some flour. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and add this and mix all of them up, and so that the apples get all the flavors. So now that we have kept this ready, I'm going to go ahead and make the pie crust, which is going to add to the crunchiness of the apple pie. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly mix all of this up. The flour is important to the apple pie because what it does is it brings apples release a lot of juices when we have added some lemon and some salt, and the cinnamon adds to the flavor, and the flour actually brings together all the juices, and then when it goes into the oven it holds itself really nicely. So that's why we add the flour. Okay, so this is ready. I'm just going to keep this to the side and show you how to make the pie crust. So to begin making my pie crust, first I'm going to measure in my spread into my measuring cup. So I'm going to be using at least 1 cup of the spread. So now that I have this ready, I'm going to add in some flour into this, and then mix the flour and the spread along with a pinch of salt, sugar, and then make the pie crust. So I have some whole wheat flour here. Typically maida is used, but I'm using whole wheat flour because it's nice and it's tasty, and it also gives a great nice flaky pie crust. I'm going to go ahead and add in my chilled spread into this, and I'm going to add this little bit of salt and then some sugar. Since I'm making a sweet pie crust, I'm going to add in some sugar into my pie crust, and then I'm going to break this spread into my flour until it resembles coarse crumbs. Okay, so I'm just going to keep mixing it until it gets well combined with the whole wheat flour, and I'll show you how exactly it should be. So essentially when you bring the flour together, it should hold, and when you just release it, it should break. So that's the consistency we want. So this particular spread that I've used is a classic spread, but it also comes in a garlic and oregano flavor, which is my favorite because I love putting it over toast and palm buns, and it tastes really nice. The best part about these spreads is that it is enriched with omega-3 and has 0% cholesterol. So now that this is ready, notice how the crumbs have formed. I'm just going to hold it so it is held together. This is the amount of spread that we have added, and that's why it's holding together. When I break it, it breaks easily. This is exactly the texture that we want. So now I'm going to add a little bit water at a time, about 5 to 6 tablespoons, but I'm going to be measuring the water because the ambient temperature and the temperature of your spread that you've used and all of that matters as to how much water is required. So I'm going to add a little bit. It needs to just bring the dough together. It shouldn't be like a roti or a puri dough, but it just should break apart if you break it. So great. So I'm just going to add in a little bit, 2 tablespoons of water right there, and just 3. And after this, I'm going to bring it together and knead a little bit until the dough comes together, and then add more water. So I'm going to add a little more water because it's not coming together as yet. So we'll just slowly add it in. I've just measured this water here, so I'm just going to go ahead and add it in. But at home, ensure that you add like a tablespoon at a time because only then the dough would come together. So notice that it's coming together. I'm going to use both my hands because you have to little bit, muscle through the dough and then bring the dough together for the pie crust. And it should not have too much water. If there's little chunks of that spread sticking around here and there, that's actually good. It's going to make your pie crust really flaky. So I'm just going to add just maybe a little bit more just to bring this part of the flour together to the dough. Okay, that's it. So now that, notice how the dough is coming together. This is exactly how we want it to be, and I'm not going to add any more water to this. So now that the pie crust is ready, what I'm going to do is to split this into two. So one is going to be for the top and the other is going to be for the bottom. So I'm going to, split this into two and then wrap it in cling film and then put it in the refrigerator and allow it to chill for about 2 hours minimum. Okay, so because when you put it for chilling, the spread that they've added will sort of bind itself and hold itself into the flour and becomes nice. So when we actually take out a chilled dough and roll it and put in the apples and bake it, it'll have a nice flaky crust. Hence the reason it's very important to chill the dough. Okay, so that's it. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it in the cling film and put it in the refrigerator. So now to completely assemble the apple pie, you need a pan like this. It's called the pie pan with a removable bottom, and it comes like that. So the bottom comes out and this is hold in there at the bottom. So I just put it in and I'm going to place my pie crust over this and fill in my apples and then cover it again with another pie crust. I'm going to keep this aside, and while I do that, I have these two pie crusts which have been nicely chilled, and it's extremely hard, and that's how it's going to be because it needs to be hard and you have to be able to sort of mold them together. So I'm going to dust my surface with some flour and I'm going to press this down with my hand. It's going to be really hard, so you have to just press it down and try to flatten it. Okay, so you can also use your rolling pin to flatten it. Ensure that the pie crust is it's going to break apart, so you have to be very skilled into rolling it, and if it does break apart, you keep pinching it and then rolling it together, and you have to actually gradually lift the pie dough and place it in the pie pan. So that's another art in itself. Okay, so because it's chilled and it's going to be a little different. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and roll my pie dough. Great. So notice that my pie dough is perfectly rolled. I didn't have to pinch it, but if I'm going to be lifting it, sometimes it does get stuck to the bottom, and if it does, keep sort of pinching it together. So I'm going to go ahead and lift this slowly and then place it on my pie pan, and once I do, I'm going to slowly tuck it in towards the edges. Okay, so because I want it to nicely rest well at the bottom, so we can fill in our apples and let the extra dough that's coming out just press the sides as well, so it nicely rests to the sides of the pan. That's it. So this is how your pie will look, and it's got a nice chilled, it's really chilled. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my apples into this base, and then I'm going to roll out the other dough and then cover it. Just going to go ahead and add the apples, and I'm going to spread it in evenly and ensure that all the nooks and corners have some apples inside them. I can already smell the delicious cinnamon flavors from the apples, and I can't wait to have this apple pie. Apple pie is one of my favorite dishes. While I was in the US, I used to have it for breakfast because it used to be a really quick fast food, and then over a period of time I actually learned how to make it and try to make it healthy with whole wheat flour as well. Great, so I'm just going to go ahead and cover my pie and shape the corners a little bit. So there's a lot of different shapes that you can do. You can actually twist and turn and then add in a shape with all the extra dough that is there in the edges. Okay, so it's about how malleable your dough is. You can shape it that way, or you can just simply cut it. Okay, now that I've sort of shaped my pie dough, I have to give it a nice wash on the top. You can either give it an egg wash, which is just briskly beaten egg white, and then brush it over the top, or like I do with a little bit of milk and honey, and so you can give it that milk honey glaze. So I have some milk over here, and I'm going to add in some honey into this. And this is a brush which is really useful that you can sort of have in your kitchen. It helps in sort of giving washes and using it in while baking and a lot of other things. So now that this is sort of mixed well, what I'm going to do is to take this and bring my pan here and brush it all over the pie crust. Okay, so it gives a nice, it browns really well. So if you give this wash with honey and milk, it really browns well, and also gives it a nice subtle sweet crust. Great, so this is great. This is exactly how much I need. I don't need to do more. And to this I'm going to sprinkle in some sugar so it gives a nice crunch. When it goes into the oven and bakes, it gives it a nice crunch. Another important thing that you have to do is to ensure that you give it a slit in the center and all the edges, so that this air sort of comes out and then helps the steam which gets trapped inside keep coming out. So it needs to, the apple pie needs to bake from the inside. So I'm just going to give it a slit. And in fact, these slits are indicators as to where you can cut your pie as well. So this is it. Perfect. Now that this is done, it's going to go into my oven at about 175 degrees, 160 to 175 degrees centigrade, and I'm going to bake it for about 35 to 40 minutes until you notice the crust is nice and brown and it'll look really crisp. Golden brown. It shouldn't become like dark brown, but just golden brown. I'm going to go ahead and put it in my oven and then show you how my apple pie looks after 40 minutes. So after 40 minutes of baking, my apple pie is ready. Notice how golden and crusty my apple pie crust is. It's really nice and flaky, and when you tap it, you should feel that it's hard and nice. Okay, so all you have to do is to cut the apple pie and serve it along with some ice cold vanilla ice cream. Hot apple pie and a cold vanilla ice cream is a great combination. Or what you can do, like what I do, is to actually slice the apple pie and simply serve it along with a glass of cold milk. So I hope you enjoyed watching this recipe of how to make the delicious apple pie, which you can make for festivals like Raksha Bandhan, which is coming up, or any other special occasion at your home. Do give this recipe a try. When you do, don't forget to share your feedback in the comments below, because I'll always be looking to hear back from you. So until then, until next time, happy cooking and healthy eating.